Welcome to the Helix webinar series. Today's session is on Helix ITSM Archiving, and it's for best practices. Joining me today as a presenter is Doug Reef. He's our Principal Support Analyst. He will do his formal introduction shortly, but also joining us as guest speakers, we have Nikhil Deshpande, for those that don't know, our Product Manager for Dashboards, and we also have Kashita and Ash that work in the development team. They will also do their introduction shortly. Before we get started, just a reminder, you will remain muted until we get towards the end. We will have roughly around 10 to 15 minutes, if all goes to plan, for us to have a live Q&A discussion with you. Until that time, when we're going through the demo and the session, please put any questions you may have in the Q&A section of Zoom, and you will find that at the bottom of your screen. So I'm now going to hand over to Doug to do his introduction and get us started. Doug, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Sam. And thanks everyone for coming today. Some of you may recognize my name. I've been at BMC Helix and supporting the AR system products for over 28 years now. And I've done a few webinars on this very topic. I think this is a really important topic, how to manage your older data. And this webinar comes at kind of an important time because BMC Helix is now enforcing some of our best practices into the SaaS environment. So some of you that are using a SaaS environment will be well aware that archiving is becoming important to you. And even the on-prem environments, we're doing more and more to try to encourage and facilitate getting this older data out of your systems and archiving it. So I think it's an important topic, and we'll get going. Just have four easy things to talk about today. One is archiving basics. Some of you may be pretty familiar with archiving. Maybe there'll be something that you learn in a couple slides here, though. We'll talk about customizations, what you can and can't customize. We'll look at some best practices for accessing your data, and then we'll go over some FAQs. So being that we're pushing some of the best practices into the SaaS environments, a lot of customers have asked questions. And so I'll try to come up with those questions and tell you what our answers to those are. So first of all, why do we need archiving? Well, your old data that you've been using for years, and some customers have been using for many, many years, is sitting in your main transactional forms like your HPD help desk, work order, SRM request, et cetera. And it's just sitting there taking up space. This is true even with other types of forms like process forms or logging forms, and data just sits in there unless you do something with it. Now, some forms have escalations that clean them out periodically, but for the most part, most forms need some kind of management, and that's what archiving is going to do. You know, why you might ask, you know, what's so bad with having this old data in there? And some of you, it's obvious, but data consumes space. Space is money, and most of the time the space that it consumes is in your database. And so you'll see that in your database you are taking up a lot of space storing information that is really older data that you could do something with. So consuming all that space is an increased cost to the disk space that you're paying for now in your database. It's also an increased cost to backing that up. So no doubt you're backing up your live data, and you're backing up all this old data with it. Having a lot of data can affect searching as well. And one example I have, there's probably a lot of examples. One example I have is if you have, say, 10 years of data and you go and do a global search, that global search is going to go and look through all the records that it has, that it's indexed, which is going to be, you know, from the beginning of time. And FTS has a threshold. There's a default threshold in FTS where it says if it's more than 100,000 or whatever you have it set to, it's just going to stop looking at data. And so the more data you have, what you're looking for may not come back at all. So having too much data really can affect your ability to find the useful data. It might be obvious that the more data you have, the database is going to be caching that data. AR servers, for some purposes, caches data, and you don't want to be wasting your memory on data that you don't need. So what does archiving do about that? Well, archiving moves data based on the age of the record from your main forms into archive forms. It also moves associated records as well. So let's say you're doing an incident. You archive an incident. Well, incident has a lot of associated records. For example, work orders, SLM measurements. Those things get archived with it as well because they're sort of you can see them as a package deal. So if you archive a help desk record, well, any of the associated records are meaningless unless they're also archived. So the archiving feature archives all the associated records as well. And moving data from the main forms to an archive form is the common policy that we use. There's another thing you can do, which is to simply delete the data. So for some forms, like a logging type of form, or maybe some form that you've created that is just stores temporary information, but you don't have an escalation to delete it, you can use archiving to simply delete data in a form based on the age criteria. So archiving can improve performance by reducing the size and number of records in your ITSM forms. It can help also enforce your retention policies. So probably most companies, I'll say all companies, have some sort of retention policy. I know a lot of our customers, banks and pharmaceutical companies, they have a retention policy, and archiving will help you maintain that because it does allow you to keep the data, but offload it from your main live forms. The archiving allows you to adjust the case age, so that the age at which it'll be moved, up to a limit. And so BMC, for SAAS, BMC has hard limits. On-prem, you can set whatever limit you want, but at least in SAAS, there are some hard limits that you need to adhere to. And then lastly, you can offload the data from the archive forms completely and get them out of the database altogether, and you can export that data and then remove it completely. So that's what archiving does. The main way that you will interface with archiving is through the Archive Management Console, which is just right off of the AR System Administration screen. So this is what it looks like. This is a busy screen. There's a lot on here. So let me go to a next slide, which is a zoom in of the top half of the screen. So the top half of the screen, you can see you have a button to enable archiving. You have an interval set to 24 hours by default. And you have a list of the policies. And in the list, you'll see two columns, default age and then custom age. So that's the age and days that each policy will use. If there's not a custom age, it will use the default age. And then you have this option to run selected policy now. So that's all on this screen. We'll talk about all those things. The lower half of the screen, below the list of policies, is an option to add to the qualification. So all the policies will have a qualification, like this one says, I'm not going to archive that record unless the notification schedule status is equal to processed, and whatever the age and date is. So when the archiving runs, it's going to look at whatever policy this is. It's going to look at the qualification and the age, and if the record meets that criteria, it'll archive it. It'll move it to the archive form. But you can add a qualification if you want to be more specific. You can't remove the original qualification, but you can add to it. And this age and days on the screen here is how you would add a custom age. So if you wanted to, instead of some of those 730s up there, which is 2 years, say you wanted to be a year and a half, well, you could just put in the age and days there, click apply, and it'll update that custom age. And lastly, at the bottom here is your option to export your data from the archive forms to an SFTP source or to a file, and then delete those records. So that is really the end result of all the archiving, is that eventually the data goes away. It's offloaded. It's put onto, I don't know, tape storage or whatever you have, and then it's removed out of the database. So that's what the screens look like. How do I enable archiving? Well, in SAAS, as of 22106, which I assume most customers are probably on 22106 or above, archiving has automatically been enabled. And there are escalations that come with the system that cause archiving to run only on the weekends. Prior to 22106, we didn't have those escalations that force it to run on weekends. And what we'd see is in some cases where there was a lot of data to be archived, there was a performance impact. So we have just decided it's a good idea to run the archiving only on the weekends. So that's enforced as well as a 22106. Prior to that version, archiving wasn't enabled by default, and we didn't force the weekends. I should mention, and I'll mention it a few times, for the SAAS folks, in March of this year, BMC started to enforce its best practices. And so one of the best practices was a maximum of 2 years for live data in your main forms. And so we started enforcing the 2 years max, 2 year age max. On-prem, again, in 22106, we started doing some of this as well. A lot of it's optional, but new installs, archiving was automatically enabled. Now, if you upgraded to 22106 and you had archiving disabled, we didn't change that. But for new installs, because we do feel like this is a best practice, we enabled it for you. We also provided those escalations that will make it run on the weekends, but we didn't enable them. So that's an option that you have. I showed you the button to run manually, so you can pick one of the policies, and most of them are pretty descriptive about what they are. Like this is the one I have highlighted for change management. And if I click on the run selected policy now, it will perform the archiving right now rather than waiting for the weekend to run it. So you could do that. You can also pick multiple, not at one time. You can pick one, run it, pick another one and run it, but they do run sequentially. If your idea was to get a whole bunch done real quick, it's still going to be sequential. So, but at least you have the option to run it when you want. Say it's Friday night, you don't want to wait till midnight to run. You can go ahead and start that. A quick note for some of those of you that have been around a while. One of the complaints that we've had over the years is that if you have a form that is FT indexed, let's say HP Help Desk, we know that has some FTS, MFS indexes on it. The archive form also gets those indexes. And so when you ever do an FTS re-index, you'll notice that a lot of time is spent indexing the archive data, which you probably don't even care about. So in 22106, we added a parameter called enable archive form FTS, and that gives you the option of not indexing archive data. Now in the SAAS environments, that we set that to false. So the enable part is false. It is not enabled. And for on-prem customers, you can do the same thing. You can add that parameter, enable archive form FTS, set it to false, and your archive data will not be FT indexed. This is just an example of this is most of the policies. This is not all of them. This is just an idea of what the policies are, like email engine error logs, email error messages. You'll see HPD help desk. You'll see SRM request, and you'll see the ages that we specified for those. So there's a lot of different ages depending on what that form stores. And you'll notice that out of all of them, the max is 730 days, which is 2 years. So in any case, you can, on SAAS, you can adjust the age up to these ages. So for example, any job run is out of the box, it comes 90 days. You can adjust that, but not higher than 90 days. On-prem, you can adjust these however you want. Let's talk about customization. So the customization has long been something I've dealt with working with customers doing archiving. Is out of the box, they don't like the way the forms look. They don't like certain attributes to archiving, so they want to do some customization. So let's talk about what you can and can't do. You can adjust how often archiving runs. You can adjust what days it runs. You can adjust how many threads archive uses. You can adjust the age of the records up to the max that I just talked about. If you have a form that doesn't already have archiving, you can enable archiving, and you can adjust the field used for the age qualification. So let's look at these a little closer. You can, I showed you that first screen for the management console, the archive management console, and you'll see that field that says 24. You can adjust that. By default, AIR server will kick on the archiving at midnight. It'll start the timer at midnight the first night after AIR server starts up. So if you do a pod restart, then midnight that night is when the timer starts. And that timer will then run again. So, and that's when that timer starts, archiving will kick off. When will archiving kick off again? Well, it's based on this interval. So if you are on SAAS, for example, and we know that it only runs on the weekends, then archiving will run on Saturday morning at midnight, and then 24 hours later, Sunday morning at midnight. So you can adjust that if you are all caught up pretty well with archiving, and archiving doesn't take that long, but you want it to run more often, you could set that to 12 hours if you want. What days archiving runs on? So like I said, SAAS runs at midnight on the weekends. And in general, that can't be customized. On-prem, the archiving runs every day at midnight or every morning at midnight, unless you have changed that interval. If you change it to 36 hours, then it'll run some nights at midnight and some days at noon. So it depends on how you have that set. And I've listed here, these are the two escalations, AR system enable global archive and disable global archive. And what these escalations do, and again, these are enabled in SaaS. On-prem, they're provided, but they're not enabled. So you can enable these if you like the idea, which we like the idea, we call it a best practice of having your archiving run on the weekends. You can do this too. And on-prem, you can adjust it a little bit. So what these escalations do is they enable archiving at 11 p.m. on Friday night, because at midnight is when archiving kicks off. So at midnight, when archiving checks is going to kick off, it will already be enabled and it will kick off. And then at 11 p.m. on Sunday night, it will turn off archiving. And it does it by setting the central config parameter, disable archive global. It'll set that to true or false. But on Sunday night at 11 p.m., it'll set it to true, which means disable. And therefore, Monday morning at midnight, it will not run. So that's something that you can, as an on-prem customer, you can set, modify. And for SaaS, it's just something for you to be aware that it happens. You can adjust the number of threads, and this is true in SaaS and on-prem. In SaaS, you can open up a change request. In on-prem, you can just change the num archive threads. And I've seen many customers in SaaS that have changed this. And adding threads does make it so that you have multiple threads running simultaneously, and those threads are moving data. They're inserting data into the archive form, and they're deleting data from the main form. And so it's a bit of database work. And the more threads you have, the more risk you have of the database having some impact. The fact that these are running on the weekends normally means that the impact should be when perhaps not a lot of people are using the system. So that might work out well, but it is something to be careful of. Don't just, I looked at a customer the other day and they had 12 threads. So 12 threads, is that a lot? Well, I'm sure by the time they got to 12 that they'd tested some lower numbers and they found out that 12 was actually doable. So be careful when you use that number. The age of records to be archived. So I showed you the screen earlier. The custom specific age and days on the right is what's actually being used, and you can change that. In SaaS, you can change up to the 2-year mark, or up to that spreadsheet I showed you that had the maximums for each policy. You can set it up to that. On-prem, you can change it to anything you'd like, but again, we recommend, just for the health of your environment, that you set it to less than 2 years. In on-prem, you can disable the policies altogether by setting that value to a -1. And for forms that, any form, whether it's a custom form or an out-of-box form, if it doesn't already have archiving enabled, you can enable it. And I just showed you here in Dev Studio, if you go to the definitions tab, you'll see archiving in there. Out of the box, if it doesn't have archiving, it'll say none and disabled for the type and state. And you can change the archival type to copy and delete, or in some cases, like I mentioned, you might just want to delete. You can do that as well. If you are copying it to a form, then you can specify a form name that will be your archive data. You can also specify whether you want to include it in that list of policies. So you may have just an integration form that you just want to keep it silently on the side and not listed in the policies, and you don't have to. And then here you can set the qualification. Like you wouldn't want to archive a record unless the status was greater than, say, closed or resolved or something, whatever that is. And that's all settable here. So you can do that. You can customize by adding new policies for forms that weren't already archived. Lastly, the field that performs the qualification. And for many customers, this is really important. I remember the day that we introduced the archive feature, and one of the big things that customers were concerned about was the fact that we use submit date. Is they wanted to use the close date for the age. And so the interesting thing here is, submit date is the day that the ticket was created, and that might be for a ticket that had been open for a year, which sometimes happens, you have a ticket that's open a year, the close date might be 1 month and the submit date is a year and a month. So some customers wanted to be able to change that, and you can change that. So you could change that to say close date instead of submit date. What that does is when we do a SQL query to find the data to be archived, we're going to look at whatever the qualification is. We're going to say, and to the end of that SQL query, we're going to say, and submit date is less than whatever today's date is minus the age. Well, in this case, it's 548 days. And we're going to look at the submit date. It's going to be whatever field you had put in there. So that's kind of an important thing for many customers, that you can still, and for SaaS environments where we are restricting some things, we're enforcing best practices, this is something we still allow. So what can't be customized? The time that archiving starts. So I noted earlier that archiving starts at midnight. That is something that can't change. And I don't know if anyone's put an idea for that. I know customers have asked about that. They don't, for them, midnight means nothing. They're 24/7 shop, so why start at midnight? Well, that's the way it is. For the most part, we haven't had complaints about that. It's not a big enough deal for us ever to have changed it. But if you were wondering, you can't. You do not get to change that. In SaaS, one thing you can't do is change which days archiving runs, because I mentioned those escalations. But there are customers, especially we've noticed some customers in the Middle East, that don't have the same weekend days that we're used to. And so their weekend may start on a Thursday. And for those customers, there is a way out. If you create a support case and you put in the prefix for whatever your summary is, you put a prefix of archiving questions, you can let us know what you need changed, and we will work with you to change that. So I kind of say it's a hard and fast rule that we run on the weekends, but there is a way out. If your weekends are different than ours, then let us know and we'll work with you. So let's talk about best practices. So in March of this year, for the SaaS environment, BMC Helix sent out some emails, and basically they said that BMC requires inactive data in all environments, non-prod and prod, to be archived based on the policy age limit, which there's a max of 2 years. If that's a problem, we still want to do it, but we're willing to work with you to try to ease into it. If you do have an issue with that, and if you've gotten the emails, all the emails have given you this information I'm giving you right now, is you can go ahead and create a support case and just put in there a note in there that says archiving questions. We'll see that, and we'll know that there's something that you want to discuss with us about this policy. The goal is that we will be enforcing this policy, but we want to work with you to ease into it and make sure that it works for you. And also, BMC recommends retaining no more than 5 years of data in the archive forms. So that's that option to export and delete. We, even though you're archiving the archive data stays in the archive forms. And there's been many times where I've worked with customers that had literally hundreds of millions of records in their archive forms. And we do want to get rid of that as well. And that's that's next step of doing the export to SFTP and then delete it. So those are the best practices. One more best practice is, how do I access the data? So once my data is in the archive forms, how do I get to it? Well, there's two general ways to get to the data. The easiest way, that maybe for those of you that have been customers for a while, you probably have noticed that from the mid-tier, you can access many of the archive forms. Some of you notice that some of the archive forms are really ugly and really not meant for human interaction. Some of them are. We don't really make an effort to make those forms look great. There's no workflow that runs on them. Active links don't run on them. So they're not, like, say, the help desk archive form. It's not the same as the help desk form. The idea is this data has been moved out of the ITSM system, and now it's just archive data. So we don't put a lot of effort in making the mid-tier work really well with it, but it does work to some degree. So you can use the mid-tier to open up the archive forms, do some basic searching. We don't want you overlaying, or if it's already overlaid, we don't want you modifying these archive forms. It can cause problems because the AR system wants to modify the archive forms. When you first set up archiving, AR system will create the archive form in the way that it wants it created. And when you ever overlay the main form, AR system will automatically overlay the archive form, and it will keep them in sync. If you step in there, you're going to break the in sync part of that. So we don't want you to do that. But there is one special case, is the archive forms have the original request ID and the original create date in them, because the request ID in the archive form is, that request ID is going to be the request ID for the archive record being created. So the very first time you created an archive record, the request ID will be 1, even if the original help desk record was request ID 10,000. So the request ID is different than the original request ID from the help desk record. So same with the original create date. The create date on the archive record will be the create date that that archive record was created. So these two fields, the originals, do exist, but they're not in a view. And that's the one customization that we're okay with, is you modifying the archive form and pulling those two fields back into a view. Also, the mid-tier doesn't maintain association. So if you look up a help desk record and you want to find the related work order, it isn't there. The relationships are broken in archive records. So all that to say, mid-tier it's not perfect. It allows you to access the data. The way that we really would like you to access the data is through the BMC Helix dashboards. And so I'm going to turn the presentation over to Shatija, and she can show you how you would use dashboards to access that data. So thanks, Shatija.
Hey, thanks, Doug. So myself, Kshitija Marathi. I'm part of Helix Dashboards R&D team, and I'll be showing Helix Dashboards, how you can consume archive data in Helix Dashboards. So let me share my screen. Yes, so once the archive data is into the archive tables, as Doug already mentioned about how to configure archival policies and get the data from transactional tables into the archived tables of ITSM. So once the data is available, then how you can access that data and generate reports using the archive tables, that we will look at in actual demo. But so there are certain ways in Helix dashboards you can generate panels with. So we have a form type of a way wherein you will have a guided flow. So if you are aware of how the ITSM data structure is, and if you are aware of the form names, and then you can just type in _archive and you will get, for example, you want to look for incident archive form, then you can search for that form and select whatever fields you have. So it will be a guided flow experience in form type. Then next one is direct SQL. So if you are expertise in writing SQL queries, then you can write direct SQL queries, and those can be used to generate panels in the dashboard, and you will be able to see archive data. And the third way is Visual Query Builder, which is a very efficient way, I would say. Whenever the end user or the report designer um, don't have idea about what is the form name or table name for this, for fetching the archive data, then Visual Query Builder is really a good way wherein you can drag drop the fields which are required to generate report on archive data. So I'll walk you through with that in short time. And then the next one, which I'll be talking about is out-of-the-box reports. So we have archived work orders dashboard, which is being shipped out of the box already. You will see, if you will search for this dashboard, you will get it And we have some upcoming dashboards which are related to incident change problem also, which are going to be part of as out of the box. So with that, I'll just move on to the actual demo. Yes. So here we are, so I have logged in as a report designer and I'll click on Helix dashboards here. Now, if I want to create new dashboard, then I'll click on new dashboard, add visualization. Then here you will see query type is selected as service management by default. So we'll keep it as it is. And here we have different types, as I mentioned earlier, form, SQL, and visual query builder. So we'll first look at the form type. Then here, I will just type HPD help desk archive. Yeah. So you will get it here as a guided flow. And here you will see list of columns that will start appearing for the selected table. So I want to look for incident number. So I just type in incident and I'll select this. Now here you can just say switch to table and you will start seeing the data from that table. Now I will look for count because I want count of incidents. So there are 865 incidents which are there in the HPD help desk. That means incident archive table. And now I want to just look at the incidents which are closed. So number of incidents which are closed. So I will select status field here and say status equal to closed. And here you will see 326 incidents are in closed status. And I'll say close incident count. And I will choose visualization as stat. And see, your panel is ready. Then like this, you will be able to build it for other ITSM modules as well with the different visualizations and using form type. Then I'll go ahead and show one example, which is related to direct SQL. So I have already a query ready with me considering a time. But yes, this query you can build by using direct SQL. And so here I want to look at the count of incidents based on priority and status. So I have added HPD help desk archive incident number and applied count function on it. And then I have selected status and priority columns. Now I want to go for cross-tab visualization as I want to group the data based on priority and status. So here I'll choose incident count in value field, then status in row and priority in columns. And you will see the count of incidents based on the status and priority. This is ready. Then we'll go ahead and use Visual Query Builder. So Visual Query Builder is a way wherein you will get drag drop facility, and you should not be worried about what is my table name and then what is my column name. So you don't have to specifically look at what is the database name of particular field, etc. Because that is available in this metadata layer, which you can see on the left-hand side. So here we have a list of out-of-the-box metadata views, which are being shipped by BMC. But right now we are interested in incident management archive. So I'll choose incident management archive metadata view here. And we have already generated a metadata layer. So what do you mean by metadata layer? Means it's a relationship between the different tables of archival. So for example, it's about incident management archive. So if you look at left-hand side, you will see different categories. So this is the first category, which is incident details, incident owner, then date, time, operational categorization, etc. And then we have impacted areas as well. So if you here look at, and I'm hovering over this field, so the data is coming from impacted area archive. Then in assignment log, the data is coming from HPD help desk assignment log archive. So like this, we have already generated the metadata layer for you to just drag and drop and generate your report. So I'll just show one as an example. So I want to look at incident data along with its work log details. So I'll go ahead and select incident number, and then I'll look for work log type, summary, submit date, etc. And I'll just hit preview. Yes, you will start seeing the data, which is actually coming from two tables, two archived tables. So you can have a look at SQL also, which is generated on the fly without you writing it actually. And it has a join between HPD help desk archive and work log archive. So like this, you will be able to generate data based on your need. So if you want to get data related to assignment log, you can just drop those fields from left to right, and you'll be able to generate that report. Also, we have different string and aggregations that can be applied to look at the data based on need. So I'll hit use query so that this report can be generated, and you will see. So I'll save this dashboard as incident archived data, something like that. Yes, so this is how there are these three ways which I have just covered, through which you can generate the dashboards for archived data. And yes, also I want to cover shortly that we have different dashboards which are coming up, and we'll be adding it in upcoming release, which are printable change details, incident details, problem details, and printable work order details archive. These are the four dashboards we'll be adding as new dashboards, as well as if we look at Visual Query Builder way, currently we only have incident management archive view available. So we'll be adding archived metadata view for change, work order, task, and problem. So these are going to get added in upcoming dashboards release. Then let me just walk you through how printable incident details archive look like. So this is one incident record which I have loaded, and it has all the details like customer information, status, then assignment data, location information, categorization, and associated work orders, etc. So if you want to look at particular incident record, then this is a good way, or this is the suitable dashboard you can have a look at, or you can generate it through customized dashboards as well. Then we have printable work order as well, which we'll be adding in upcoming release to get the details of particular work order. And yes, you can get details of 3-4 incidents or work orders at a time also. So you can select multiple records and it will be generated. Like, yeah, like this, it will be generated. Then I just want to lastly go ahead and just want you to look at the documentation which is already published, and it has information about archived work orders dashboard. So you can have a look at this documentation, and it will surely help you to get onboarded on how we can use these different types of uh, generating the queries in the dashboard, and how you can generate date, I mean, panels or dashboard on archive data. So yeah, with that, I'll just get back to the next slide, which is about Helix dashboards roadmap. So we have Nikhil will be talking about the dashboards roadmap. Over to you, Nikhil.
Thank you, Kshitija. So we looked at 3 ways of developing dashboards from your archive forms. The most common one being the form. You go to the form or pick up your form and field, you write SQL. We also looked at an out-of-the-box dashboard, the archived work orders. Now, we looked at what are the most common ways what are the most common use cases where customers might need to view their archive records. And one of them is you want to look at an old incident or a change that was archived. Maybe it's 3 years, 5 years old, whatever. And you want to be able to view all the details of the main record, as well as the associated, the child forms. So we have, we plan to develop archived printable documents on these archived records. So Kshitija just showed us a demo of one. So we'll do that for all of the ticket types, so incidents, problems, changes, tasks, and work orders. So this is something we plan to do hopefully within the next one release, possibly 25.3. It's quite possible that some of them might, we may not be able to deliver some of these in 25.3. In that case, they will come in the following release, 25.4. And the other is views. You can use Visual Query Builder to develop dashboards using those views. And we showed you, Kshitija showed you how you can do it on the incident management archive. We are in the process of developing views for the other ticket types as well. So problem, change, work order, and task as well. So these are also in progress. We hope to deliver some of these, at least 2 of these in 25.3 and the other 2 in 25.4. So we are reasonably certain that within the next 2 releases, we'll be able to deliver these items that you see here. Additionally, we are also looking at possibly developing a couple more dashboards, possibly another 1 or 2, especially for dashboards that work on closed tickets. So any dashboards, we are looking at what out-of-the-box dashboards we have, and we'll consider developing maybe a couple dashboards on records that have been archived. And these are mostly incidents, so on closed incidents and so on. So with that, we are reasonably certain that Helix dashboards will be you'll be in a position to use Helix dashboards to generate dashboards of your data, of your archive data, as well as if you just want to pull up any record from archived incidents, changes, then the printable document utilities will help you do that. In addition to that, if you have most other requirements for accessing archive data would be custom requirements. In that case, you'll have to develop your own custom reports to address those needs. With that, I'm going to hand it over back to Doug.
Okay, let's see here. Well, thank you. The next section is I have some frequently asked questions, and I noticed in the Q&A that you guys have asked some really good questions, so appreciate the interaction. And I'll just some of these have been answered already in the Q&A. Some of these I'll just quickly go over. One of the questions that we've had from customers is, how can I retrieve data from archive forms back into the main forms? And this isn't an option. It's as we've talked about, is the relationships aren't kept. When we move data into an archive form, we're basically moving it out of ITSM and just storing that data so that you could use it for retention policies and create reports on it. Moving it back in is not something that there's a feature for. So the answer is we don't have a way to do that right now. There's another on the next page. So all these frequently asked questions will be posted with the deck, so you can come back and look at some of these if you'd like. One of the questions, I think somebody asked it in the Q&A, something about attachments, but the question is, will attachments be accessible after archival? Well, you may have noticed in the dashboards that the dashboard reports don't give you attachments. The attachments are, I mean, how do you show an attachment in a report? I mean, you could list the name of the attachment, but how do you actually get to the attachment? Well, the attachments fields are still available if you do use the mid-tier client. You can open up the record and you can open up the attachment within the record. Another thing you can do is an AR system report, not a web report, but an AR system report. That allows you to export the attachment to the file system if you'd like. So that's a couple ways that you can access the attachments once the data has been archived. Another question is, can I export and delete archive data from a single archive form? And I did kind of want to mention this earlier when I talked about this export and delete, is this little field at the bottom of the management console. It lets you pick an age in days, and that age is the age of the archive record. So if you archived a year ago and this data has been sitting in the archive form for a year, well, then that's a year old. It's not the age of the original ticket. It's not the age of the original help desk ticket. It's the age of the archive record. And when you select an option here, it's going to run this on every policy. It's not going to run it. It doesn't allow you to select a single policy. It runs it on every policy. So the idea is that periodically you would do some management where you cleaned up your archive data and you run it on all the policies. So it makes a lot of sense when you're looking at that, the overall management of it. But you don't get to pick a single policy. The last thing I want to mention is we do recommend using the export. I don't have it selected on the screen here. One of the options that we don't recommend is this one, export and delete. And one of the reasons for that is it's going to export it to the file system, which is probably going to be in a pod. And if that pod got restarted, you'd probably lose that data. So we recommend using the export to SFTP and delete. So that's it for my contents today. And just as a quick summary, we talked about what archiving is and what it does, how to manage and customize archiving. We provide SAAS customers the archiving policy information. In a second, I'll make sure you have a link to where that policy information is documented. And we've tried to answer some of your commonly asked questions. So that's what we tried to do today, and I think we did it. The last couple pages is references, so you'll have access to these. A couple that I wanted to point out is on the second page of references, there's the subscriber policies. So all of the information for the SaaS customers about the changes are documented there. So that might be something important to look at. Also, Kshitija referenced a page, archived work order dashboard, and I provided the link there as well. So that's all I had for you today. So Sam, back to you. Thank you.
Super organized as usual, and we did very well. Slightly 2 minutes over, but hopefully we've got time to answer these few questions. It has been really, really busy in the Q&A, lots and lots of questions. So if we don't get your questions answered today, I promise I will take them to the team and get them answered. We will be sharing out the blog post, which will come out in your thank you with all the questions that have come from today. Hopefully you'll find those helpful. And any of the links that Doug has shared into the slides, they will also be shared with you in a format that you can download those as well. So let's just go to the questions while I start unmuting everyone so you can speak to us also live. First question is from Graham, and Graham, I'm just going to see if you're still on. I'm going to just unmute you if you wanted to talk your question, because I can see it's around ideas and it might be something that Nikhil can help with. Do you want to speak to us live, or do you want me to read your question out? I'm hoping you're going to say yes.
Sorry, I need to unmute
Hello.
the headset, sorry.
That's all right. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, so I think the first one around attachments has been answered. And obviously, I know there's been a discussion around accessing the archive data within Smart IT, which I know I've just submitted an idea because it's not possible at the moment, which from our point of view, it's kind of disappointing because obviously we know other places within the ITSM industry actually offer that, where the analysts can actually access archive data live whilst they're trying to search for stuff. Because we don't know about other customers, our agents, because we work for the NHS in the UK, so our agents don't have time to go and check in a dashboard report.
Nikhil, do you want to take that question?
Not sure why. Why would they not be able to access a dashboard?
It's
because they're on the phone.
It's because they're on the yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. They're on the
They're
phone.
handling customers. I understand I'm sorry, I don't mean to step on you, but
No, go ahead, right?
feel as strongly about this as you do. The 2-year thing is an arbitrary edict, is how it's coming across. There's just no point in it. There might be point in large volume data, but by age isn't the way. By volume would be the way, right? But if somebody's on the call and they're talking with the customer, they don't have time to go launch dashboards and find a report and search a form. And we had Boxy, we had Yellowfin, now we have Grafana. What's the next one going to be? I don't know why BMC, even product-wise, would want to tie themselves to the report tool and not just give us the forms.
Yeah, it's obviously just from my point of view, from our point of view, just to give you some background. Obviously, we're dealing with GPs who are dealing with people's health. So our analysts who are taking their calls, unfortunately, have got a GP on the end who's have IT problems. They haven't got time to go to dashboards. They need to be able to assist that customer there and then on the phone. They want an answer there and then, and us having to get them to go to dashboards, and that is just delaying and obviously delaying people's health.
So we're talking of records that are more than 2 years old. How often are you talking? How often are you dealing with support requests for that old data? I mean, in most cases,
quite regular. It could be quite regular. It just depends. It depends on the nature of the call, and obviously, the 2-year for us is ridiculous, because obviously we need to be able to access that data and access that data quickly. And it's not. And to be fair, it's not just obviously the analysts on the desk. It's people throughout the IT department, and obviously going to a dashboard isn't as quick as putting a reference number into Smart IT and having the data right in front of you.
Okay.
Yeah, and at the very least, like government, we have a National Archives requirement, right? We have to have 2 years of data available, but they want fiscal years, not calendar years. So 2 previous fiscal years plus the current fiscal year we're in. And so that's always going to be between 2 and 3 calendar years right there. It just, and depending on the part of government, that National Archives requirement is 5 or 7 years. So there are laws that hurt us here on some of these things.
So Doug, is there a procedure for customers to request having more data in production forms?
Yeah, yes, they can create a support request, and and then support will work with them to try to achieve what their personal goals are, what their corporate goals are. So yeah, we as I mentioned, is our goal is eventually to bring everybody into alignment, but for some customers that have a specific use case that doesn't make sense, we will work with them.
Yeah, if there's a way that maybe the archiving could be based off record count, that might make more sense. For an organization that runs 5 million tickets a year, well, that's very different than another org that runs 50,000 a year. There's absolutely no reason for them to be archiving at 2 years, but the 5 million a year, maybe it makes sense, right? Maybe it should be data volume based instead of age based.
Your point makes a lot of sense. So we'll take that to R&D or PM.
Doug, I'll get the details for both Graham and Ryan, and maybe it's something that we can follow up offline. And also, Graham, if you've got the idea, if you want to share it to me in the chat, when I send out the blog post, I'll also include that as well.
Yeah,
We can take this offline. I
that's
think
fine.
it's a topic we need to continue to explore, and I work very closely with the support team and PMs.
Yeah, well, to be fair, it actually comes in quite handy because we're actually meeting our new account manager tomorrow anyway, so it was something we were going to raise
Okay.
with her as well, Samantha. So we'll raise it that way as well.
Okay, I mean, I'll connect offline with you with my
that's fine,
email
yeah.
details as well. And if it's also any of interest for others, then just let me know. But certainly for you and Ryan, if you've both got the same problem statement, I can work with Doug and the team.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for raising this. Ryan, did you have anything else to say? I noticed your question came in after, and obviously you started speaking with Graham.
About the associations. When you say associations are lost, like, does that include work info? Like, that's a different form and it's associated to like the regular incident form or work order form. Is the work log or work info data lost then?
So they will be, but the forms, each of the individual forms will be archived, but the relationship between them won't be maintained, because I think the hard thing is the relationships are based on some ID, sometimes the request ID. And if the easy way to see how this isn't working is if you go into the incident form and you see some of the table fields don't have any data in it because the queries are against the main form. The table field was meant to look against, like, say, work order main form, not against the archive form. So it's not that the data isn't there, it's just that it's not easy to visualize it. And I think in that case, dashboards can be created that would bring the relationship back, but the forms don't do it.
So we don't archive the association form.
Well, in most cases, I saw
we just have to build them ourselves.
Right. The relationship is still there. The data is still there, and the relation in AR system, all the relationships are. There's no. Generally speaking, there's no keys, foreign keys, or anything that maintain it. We maintain the relationships via data, and so the data is still there. It's just that the forms, especially in the mid-tier, the forms don't represent the associated data, but it is there, so you could build reports that would show that association.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you, Ryan. I'll make sure we write a note of everything that's said, so we'll follow that up in the Q&A. I can see Ross has got a question, and Ash, you wanted to answer that live. Do you want to take Ross's question? And Ross, feel free to come off mute as well. You've got two questions, actually, if you can hear us.
Yeah, I think first question was related to the association. So Doug just answered that. The second question, if Ross, you are here, so maybe Doug, you can answer that one. Is it possible to write own progressive view to access archive forms? If that is the case, can be accessible without dashboards.
Is the question here, I'm trying to see, is the question here whether or not you can to create our own progressive view? I don't know the answer. I think technically I don't see a reason not to, because the progressive view could just point to either the view of the archive form. We don't do this out of the box, but I think technically the functionality exists to create a progressive view against that form. It's not something I've tried. I think functionally it should be possible.
Yeah, that is correct. It would be a customization, lot of relationships and everything they will have to be found. Technically, it's possible to do a progressive view. You're right. That's what I believe so. Yeah. If Ross is here, he can ask any follow-up.
I think he was still online, but if he's not able to talk, we'll come back to him. There was a question, Ash, that you were answering. Do you want to continue with that question?
Sure. I will. So the question, I think a couple of other similar questions came in. We mentioned about archive process running on the weekends. So just to clarify, so Doug covered that. There are a couple of escalations. The weekend definition is, first of all, it is server time zones weekend. That means Friday night, 11 a.m. server time. So usually in SAAS, we run servers in UTC, but some customer environments based on customer request may be running in a different time zone. So whichever that time zone is, Friday night 11, by default, archiving will be enabled, and Sunday night 11 is when it will be disabled. The question from Emmanuel is it possible to change it based on the customer requirement to run it on a 2 p.m. Saturday, because they have a Saturday working as well? So yes, it is possible. I did answer. So they may raise a support case for doing that, and you can tell your definition of the weekend, and those two escalations, which enable and disable the archive global flag, they can be adjusted one time, and it can then enable the archive as per your definition of weekend. So if you know exactly at 2 p.m. Saturday you want to start and Sunday 11 p.m. you want to end, that can be done. It will be one-time customization, but a support case with a justification would be required. Hope that answers it.
Yeah, thank you very much. That answers it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you for your question. Joe, can you hear us?
Yes.
Hello, I can see. Is it to do with your question in the chat?
Yep, I posted my question in the chat.
Okay.
It's about the cost of archiving. Is there a way to determine chargeback to a tenant or a department, out of the box without having to create a custom report as to who is using archiving the most, whose data resides on the archive form more than anybody else?
You can find that out through the reports. You run
So you have
a report on archive data, and then you can look at which users those tickets are associated with, and accordingly you can set up your own chargeback policy.
Okay. That's what I thought it might be. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. I want to thank Doug for an excellent presentation. It shows me that archiving is still very important for our customers, and obviously for Nikhil and Kashita for joining us and just adding a little bit extra on the dashboard side, and Ash for answering a lot of questions. So thank you everyone for joining. We hope you've appreciated it, and I'm sure I will see you on some of the other sessions we're running. If you do forget where they are, there is the BMC community. We have a Helix webinar page. Any sessions we're running, including the ones I run with Nikhil's team, they're also listed on there. So keep an eye. We've got more coming up. And if you do get 5 minutes when you get your thank you email and you can fill in the survey, just let me know if there's any other topics you'd like. I do reach out to the wider audience. So thank you very much. Have a good rest of the day. Good evening, wherever you are.